Hey moms, welcome to the Mom Mindset Show where we talk all things mom life from A to Z. I'm your host, Rachel Benson. I'm a wife, a mom of 6, a grandma of 7, a real estate agent, and a life coach for moms. I've been through every age and stage of motherhood, and I've never met one I didn't like. I've also never met one that didn't come with its share of challenges and personal growth. As moms, we set the mood and tone of the home. We're the emotional support and the cheerleaders for everyone in the house, not to mention the cook, the chauffeur, and the housekeeper. There's a lot to know and do, and that's what I'm here to help with. I want to help you create the home and family life of your dreams, and I do that not only by helping you with the skill set, but more importantly, the mindset that can really help you succeed as a mom. Thanks for being here. Let's talk about what's on your mind today. Hi, Tammy.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm excited to be here.
My guest today is Tammy Hill. I'm going to let her introduce herself and talk about her work, and then I'll explain how I found her.
Okay. I'm Tammy Hill. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified sex therapist and educator. I have taught the last 10 years at Brigham Young University. I have a private practice where I help couples often with not only sexual challenges, but that's typically what I'm working on. I've written 2 books. One is a children's book called God Made Girls and Boys. And then this year in January 2023, I published the book that took me 7 years to write called Replenish, Creating Sexual Fulfillment in Marriage. And I'm so excited about its success. We've run out of copies 3 times. It's been on Amazon's top 10 list for Mormonism since it came out 6 months ago.
That is exciting.
I'm so excited. It's at BYU Bookstore. We're hoping that it gets into Deseret Book. The distributor's still trying to help that happen. But anyway, it's really wonderful. I am passionate about helping people claim joy in their marriages. And I believe that our sexual relationship is one that's designed for that we can truly replenish one another and rejoice in that replenishment as we face all of the labors that are involved with raising a family and providing for a family and all those wonderful things that we do every day. And
I love that. Joy is my favorite topic. And I actually just got your book on Kindle, so it's available there as well. I first heard about you. I was listening to another podcast that my son produces, and you were talking about the process of writing your book and how even at your age, which we won't disclose unless you want to, I don't know what your age is, but that you were still uncomfortable writing essentially a sex book with your parents, maybe, reading it, or have they read it? I'm curious.
My parents have the book and they said they're reading it. My mother has really struggled with the idea that it's okay to have oral sex. And she lets me know that all the time, that I shouldn't be promoting that kind of behavior. And so I don't feel like I'm promoting it. I feel like I'm explaining it, but people can choose what they want to do in their own lives that way. And so, yeah, it's been a little bit of a challenge for them.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the things I wanted to address in some of our conversation but you talked about I heard you on your podcast with your husband, and you talked about ghosts in the bedroom, people like parents and church leaders, and we'll get to that. But I'm glad you brought that up, and it's so interesting how no matter what age we are, the influence of our parents is still so powerful. And I think that's especially true in our intimate lives and marriage. Like, whatever programming we had surrounding that growing up can really impact us when we're older,
yes,
even after years and years of marriage. Mm-hmm. So do you want to just explain a little bit about your family and your marriage to Jeff?
So I am married to Jeff Hill. Together, we have 12 children. Both of our first spouses passed away, and my late husband, Mark, and I had 4 children, and Jeff and his late wife, Juanita, had 8 children together. And Jeff and I have been married for 17 years now. When we did get married, there were 9 children living in the home along with us. So there were 11 of us all together, and it's been quite a ride. It's been by far the most difficult thing I've done. But I'm really proud of our kids. I'm proud of us for holding on and really doing the sacred work of raising all of these children the best to our ability. And our youngest bought a home and moved out about, I don't know, 5 or 6 months ago. So we've been empty nesters for most of this year, and it's so much fun. It's so much fun. I love, and it always makes me feel like my children, or people think I don't love my children or love being a mother. That's not the case. The fact is, I really love being a woman mom and a wife.
Yeah.
And so it's fun for me to not have to be grocery shopping for so many people and preparing meals for so many people every day and doing so much of the labor involved with having a large family. I really enjoy having a lot less work. That is,
I hear you.
yeah,
Yeah.
Is what I get to do now, which is really, really fun.
I know all the young moms out there are crying now. Like, I want to have less work. We became empty nesters last fall. But we have 6 kids. Our 2 youngest are single and live nearby. And my mother-in-law had 9 kids, and she has a saying that they never leave. They just come back and bring more with them. So I know you have quite a few grandkids. How many do you have?
We are expecting number 40 next month.
Oh my goodness. That's got to be close to like a world record, right?
Yes. I have no idea about world records, but it is a lot. We have 2 children that of our 12 that don't have any children yet. I suspect that we could reach, 50 or 55 by the time everybody's done. And it's really fun being a grandma. I love being a grandma. And I love that all the things I enjoyed doing as a mom with young children, I kind of get to do again whenever I want to do them, not like that I have to keep doing them all the time.
I know. It is the best. We have 7 grandkids, and they are the joy of my life, seriously. But yeah, we went over and babysat a couple of weeks ago, like putting 4 kids, my one daughter has 4 kids, putting 4 kids to bed. I was like, honey, this is a 3-person job. It was me and my husband and our youngest daughter all over there. And it was still like, I always think parenting's like a game of whack-a-mole, like those whack-a-moles they used to have at Chuck E. Cheese, where you smack one down, the other one pops up. You get one thing under control and something else is coming at you. So let's get into our questions that we I sent you some questions and things I wanted to talk about. And I really want to get into, I'm calling it like the mood of marriage, the mood of I had some good way of saying it. I will put it in the intro, but just, I think there's a whole mindset that is helpful for, when it's time to be in wife mode and be in that intimate relationship, and more than just a sexual relationship, but in particular, and today I wanted to get into that. So I have heard so many women over the years, women talk, right? And I've heard so many people say, oh my goodness, it's so hard to get into wife mode after all day of being in mom mode, and you have a million things on your mind and you're preoccupied with, whether it's even just a mental grocery list that's going, or your mental to-do list, or just the worries and stresses of spending the day with the kids. So have you counseled people on this, like where they're like, I just can't shift gears, but like, what advice would you give people on how to prepare for intimacy after a long day?
Yeah, this is such a great question. And it's certainly one I can resonate with from my own experience, that when you're in the thick of raising a family, it often isn't in the front of your mind to be pursuing your husband in a romantic way. If it's okay, Rachel, I want to just talk briefly about some of the science that we've learned over the last 10 to 20 years about female sexuality. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Because I think it puts a real important context for us to understand. Women, by and large, have considered themselves, and they've been considered by society and by men to be the weaker sex as far as sex is concerned, to be kind of broken or just not as not generally the high desire partner. Now that sometimes isn't true, but typically women have viewed themselves as weaker sexually because they don't respond as fast as their husbands do.
Right.
And what we know is that all of us our age and even still being taught in some schools, unfortunately, is that the sexual response cycle is first desire, then arousal, then orgasm, and finally afterglow or resolution. And we've learned that since 1958 when Masters and Johnson's published this work. And so we've grown up thinking the first thing we need to have is desire, and then we'll have arousal. But what we've learned is that female brains were not researched early on. They were only researching the male brain.
Yeah.
And so in the last 20 years, 25 years, we've started really looking closely at female brains. Sexologists back in about the year 2000, 1998 to 2000, really conclusively decided that the female sexual response cycle is arousal first, then desire, then orgasm, and then resolution. So you see, those are just backwards.
Right.
A man's is desire, then arousal, while a woman is arousal and then desire. As women, we by and large need to become aroused in order to want to move to have sex. And so I think the most important thing we can do to have this mindset shift is to be aware of what creates sensual feelings for us, or what creates arousal for us, and then implement those things in the way that we choose to live. So personally, this is something I do, is when I know that my husband and that we are both wanting to get together sometime that evening, oftentimes a few hours before I know we will be getting together, I'll put on some lingerie and I'll put my clothes over the top of it. And a lot of times that little secret that I know what's underneath the clothing is kind of exciting. And then also the textures of fabric that brush against your skin and your nerve endings, it can really be sensual and a sensory type of an experience that creates arousal for you. I know that hair brushing, when my husband brushes my hair and massages my head, is very arousing to me. So learning things that are arousing to you and making sure you're doing those things and that your husband knows those things, what those things
you communicate that.
Yeah, communicate that. And have that be the focus more than needing. The focus is start doing those types of things. And so that you're already, on your way to desire by the time it's time to go to bed. To me, that's the most helpful things women can do.
Yeah. I think, if you want to be romantic, you got to think some romantic thoughts. And those aren't like, oh, I got to do this with the kids and remember to get this at the store. Like those thoughts are not going to lead to romance after hours, right? Like you got to think some sexy thoughts and take responsibility for your own desire, because like you said, desire has to come first. I remember learning that, like, I swear I was a solid 15, 20 years into my marriage. And I was like, why didn't anybody tell me this? I've been waiting to get in the mood all these years. Like I see my husband, it's just a snap for him, and I thought something was wrong with me. Like you said, women have been, maybe society thought of women as broken, but I know a lot of women think of themselves as broken. Like, what's wrong with me? My husband is ready to go at the drop of a hat and I'm, not. But then when you can, I think it's kind of like when you start exercising, if you just tell yourself, I'm going for a 10-minute walk, and then you go and you're like, oh, I'm into this. This is great. I'm going to keep going. I think it can be like that in our intimate lives too. Just allow yourself to begin, but it is, I acknowledge, it's very hard when you're dead tired at the end of the day. And but I like the title of your book, Replenish, because I think it can be something that gives you energy and pleasure, where a lot of what we do all day is a lot of like physical work and mental work for sure. So,
well, and there are many, many ways to make love. Well, intercourse is what we all we think intercourse is sex, but to me, there's so many ways to have sex and to make love, and it doesn't need to be be intercourse at all.
Mm-hmm.
There's touching, there's cuddling, there's really just being together and listening and gazing into each other's eyes. I do making love retreats and teach couples how to do a lot of that type of the erogenous zones and the tantric approach to sexuality. There's a lot of deep lovemaking that can go on that doesn't really even involve intercourse.
This could take us off in a different direction, but I know I heard you talk about the tantric sex. I don't know what that is, but we will maybe have to have another interview another day so I don't get off on that. But so essentially you're saying like, give it some forethought for yourself, like take responsibility for whatever will help you be in the mood and help you maybe preserve some energy so that you're not like giving it all to the kids during the day, the kids, the house, that, you know, if you have a job outside the home, I mean, whether you do or not, as women, the work, you know, I hate to say it never ends, but I kind of feel like it never ends. Yeah. Even now as empty nesters, I'm just always doing something. So I know one other thing that is a huge issue for a lot of moms is our ever-changing bodies throughout our, my goodness. I mean, I've gone from, you know, college student bod to grandma bod in the 34 years I've been married. And I don't know if I've ever been totally satisfied with any of them, you know, had 6 kids, been pregnant and nursing for like, oh my goodness, it must have been like 14 years solid, you know, and all of those things, like we can bring that self-consciousness, those body image issues. Some people don't like to be touched because they're touched so much by the kids, you know, all the time. But how do we deal with our issues with our bodies and our body image? I know that could be a whole podcast episode, but are there things that you would suggest that women can be thinking in intimate moments so they're not like losing themselves and feeling so self-conscious?
There's so many things you hit on. I want to make sure that if you're feeling you're touched out and you don't want to be touched more in the evening or at the end of the day or by your husband, I want you to be thinking of touch from your husband as replenishing touch. It should be something that's not taking from you. It needs to be touch that's giving to you. And if it's not, that's an essential conversation to be having with your husband. And maybe you need to seek out some help together so that it can be something that is giving and restoring and replenishing energy to you. As far as body image, you know, we all are swimming in a culture that we have learned from infancy as women in the US that our job is to be desirable. We're supposed to look good. We're supposed to be desirable to men. And maybe no one's come right out and said that, but that's a subliminal message that we've gotten for years, decades. And so to me, one of the best books that has really helped me is More Than a Body by Lindsay.
I've read that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love those girls and I love the work they've done. I think they have such an important message. And for me, one of the things that has helped me is to tune into more of not what I perceive my spouse is seeing in my body. Like that's called sexual spectatoring, when you're, instead of actually feeling what it is you're experiencing in sex, that you're imagining what your spouse is seeing while you're there.
Interesting.
So you're not really being fully present. And
right.
So I would encourage you to, if you find yourself doing that, which isn't abnormal, is to tune into your senses when you are in the moment, whatever moment, whether it's in the bedroom or outside the bedroom. If to be more in the present, one of the easiest things to do is to start tuning into what is your sensory input in that moment. What am I seeing? And then focus on what you're seeing. What do I smell right now? And really analyze what you're smelling. What am I hearing? So pause and really tune into all of your senses, and it can bring you in the front and center of what it is you're experiencing. So if it does happen to be sexual, it can help you be front and center into being able to receive more pleasure, because you're not focused on like an observer, or you're not having someone being observing you in sex. You're actually being present in sex with that. Also, deep breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. If you want to kind of settle yourself and your anxieties around body image in making love, breathe deeply. Sometimes you have to just get your head around it a little bit before let your husband know what it is that this is helping you kind of stay focused in the experience that you're having, and breathe a little bit. He can encourage and breathe with you as well. And then the third thing I think that's really helpful that the Kite Girls talk about is appreciation for what our bodies do. And the fact that you've had 6 children, Rachel, and you've been able to nurse, and you've chosen to nurse those babies. And I mean, isn't that incredible that you're able to do that? And I haven't had that many children, but I am so grateful. So I've had lots of health challenges through the years, and I'm just so grateful that with my back surgery, that I don't have pain anymore walking upstairs. I used to always be in pain. And so for me, focusing on the things I can do, because my body is not like we're separate. Our spirit and our body are together, the soul. A lot of times we dissociate a little bit and ourselves from our bodies, and we don't treat our bodies the way maybe that we would really treat ourselves. But we have to be more integrated and be really grateful for the things that we are able to do and what we are able to experience. So savor those little moments. If you love working in the garden and gardening, or smelling flowers, or holding a newborn, or really preparing a beautiful meal that tastes nice, or painting, or presenting something that you're excited about, whatever it is that you love to do, I hope that you'll recognize you wouldn't be able to do any of those things without your body. And it's because we have bodies that we're able to experience so much joy.
Yeah, that's so true. And when you were saying about, like, you might be thinking, what's my husband thinking about me and my body? Honestly, from what I've heard from everyone over the years, the husbands, they're actually really appreciative and not critical. It's us doing that to ourselves so much of the time. And I loved what you said about just being, like, I would describe it as mindfulness, just like, I'm here, I'm present, like, saying those words to yourself. And if you have candles that you can burn, or, music that you can play, so that just brings you into the moment. I think that is so helpful, so that you can completely enjoy it. Like, you really do have to be in the moment to enjoy an intimate experience. And and sometimes it's just a matter of managing your mind to be like, no, I'm going to think about that later, that to-do list, or whatever it is, or my concerns about my body, even, like, I can put that off for as long as this takes, So thank you for your answer. That's so good. And I recommend that book too. I know my daughters really liked that book, More Than a Body. So I assume over the years you've counseled with couples who have very different levels of desire and interest. And you use the term lower desire partner, and I've heard that a lot. And I like higher and lower desire. And I think if you're ranking yourself, I just can't think of anything less sexy than thinking of yourself as a lower desire partner. Like, that will do nothing to raise your level of desire. So we got to stop that. We got to find a different way. And I don't even know if it's true. I think it's just, we all have different energy levels. We all have different like, our mental state can be very different at different times, but to come together and to share those moments, we got to figure something out. So what are some good ways that you think to think of your differing levels of interest, desire, energy, and, like, how can couples work together to get their needs met?
I love this whole idea. And I think I'll go back to my first response to the first question is the cognitive ability for us to recognize that we are not the lesser sex, desire, sex, gender. women actually, by and large, have more sexual capacity for pleasure than men do. And we have the capacity for multiple orgasms. We have so much more. It's a little slower getting started, but once we're there, we have a lot more capacity for pleasure than men do, because they have a refractory period where they're unable to have an erection for a while after they've ejaculated and orgasmed. And so for me, what I will go back to saying, recognizing that you need to know what creates arousal for you. It isn't the fact that you're low desire, it's the fact that you're a woman and you experience a sexual response cycle differently than men
Yeah.
do.
Mm-hmm.
And when you know what you find arousing, make sure you're incorporating that in your life. Make sure your spouse knows what it is that you find arousing. Talk about this, and so that he can do things that can really help you have more desire, get into the state of having more desire as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more couples that would understand that it's just different. It's not that one is a low desire all the time. It's that one is a woman
Yeah.
and that women have a different response cycle than what all of us have learned forever.
Yes. Yep. You heard it here on the Mom Mindset Show. Everyone, just remember that you're not low desire. You just need to get in the moment first, and your husband does it differently. And so if it seems like he's always in the mood and you're like, what's wrong with me? it's just kind of flip-flopped. And you're describing like having a conversation with your husband about this. And I feel like for a lot of people, that would be a like just awkward toe curling conversation to even be able to open up and have. Do couples like, do you have to counsel them so that they can begin to talk about these things more?
I haven't really had, I guess they're reaching out for help this way. So they've already kind of talked about that there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, I think that there is a lot of sexual shame around, for women, a righteous woman doesn't need to have sexual pleasure. I mean, there's so many little myths that have been associated with female purity. And what I think, if you're having a hard time having these conversations in your marriage, let me just explain what I believe is that when we marry someone, especially in covenant marriage, we are promising that we will only share this romantic, flirty, sexual part of ourselves with this one person.
Mm-hmm.
And that person is covenanting the same thing with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a dynamic of two people that, you've promised each other, this is where we will explore this.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have one person that's not showing up
Mm-hmm.
and not sharing what they need, or maybe both of you are afraid to share what you need, you're never going to grow. This is not going to be a dynamic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be able to look at each other in the eyes and have these conversations. A lot of times people say, oh, it's better to not rock the boat. Well,
Mm-hmm.
I think peace over truth leads to absolutely no intimacy, no real intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not willing to talk about these vulnerable, hard topics, you're not really going to be able to mature and develop in a way that you were designed to do.
So if one part of the couple is just like, hey, like they're feeling like their sexual needs are not getting met in marriage, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of, I don't know how to phrase this question exactly, but how would you suggest opening up that conversation?
I think one of the interventions I use always in therapy is I teach couples to start doing a weekly check-in. Mm-hmm. And I encourage them to check in 4 areas every week, where the 2 of them are like, if you served a mission, it would be like your companion inventory. Mm-hmm. But you are really just the 2 of you are checking in with, how has this week been? And you check in physically. How are you doing physically? Are you hurting anywhere? Have you been able to get out in the sunshine? Have you laughed? Are you able to get your heart rate up? Are you having good nutrition? I mean, how's your sleep? There's so many things that you can talk about. How are things really going physically for you this week? Then how are you doing emotionally this week? What have been the highs? What have been the lows? Listen and find out. Spiritually, if spirituality is part of your marriage, then checking in, how are you feeling spiritually? And to me, that means how connected are you feeling to heaven right now? Talk about that. And fourth, how are you doing sexually? We need to have these conversations every week. So what's going on for you sexually? And in that moment, you should be able to say, I really would like to make love more often, or there's some things I would really like to try, or I'd like to read a book together, or how would you feel if we were to go together and go to a making love retreat or something? I mean, have these conversations together so that it's not this one bomb that goes off once, big time problem.
Yeah.
But this is an ongoing check-in with you are my lover, and you are the one that this is something I need to know about you, and that you need to know about me, because we are in this is where we've covenanted that we will explore and develop, and we don't have other options. If we go true to what we promise and to do, we don't have other options. And so we want to be able to, grow and we become that couple that has a dynamic, thriving sex life. And I promise you, Rachel, and anyone listening, that if you can build this type of a dynamic relationship around your sexual stewardship, you can do anything. You can do this. Going outside of the bedroom and facing problems as a team are going to feel so much simpler, because
that's really neat. I like that.
So vulnerable.
Yeah, that's where you really allow yourself to be known. And yeah, I don't know why that can seem so scary, I gathered from reading your book and listening to your podcast that you essentially have an anything goes in marriage philosophy in the bedroom. And maybe that's not true, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. And again, I feel like everyone comes to marriage with some different mindset about sex and what's okay and what's not okay and what they're comfortable with and what's just like, it's fine if people want to do that. That's not for me, I don't need that. I don't want that, so I think there's a line between that and I'm just scared to try new things, or I heard that was bad. And, especially Christian couples might have some hesitations about certain things like you talked about in the beginning. So how can couples become more comfortable with trying new things beyond, we're going to talk about it as one thing, but how do they do that? Explore new territory in their love life?
So I when you say, I guess I have a relationship that anything goes in my in the bedroom, anything goes that my husband and I both feel is okay. And as it's imperative that as equal partners, you make these decisions together, and that both of you are having equal voice in making those decisions. In most couples, there's one that tends to be a little bit more hesitant to try new things, and one that seems to be a little bit more eager. And sometimes that can be a dynamic that sometimes the one that's more eager gets a little louder and maybe a little more persuasive or even manipulative, and the other kind of gives in just to make peace, and that's not healthy either. So in those situations where you're not being able to come to terms with what you'd like to try, I would ask the person that's like lingerie. This is one I just had in session yesterday. A husband would really like his wife to wear lingerie. He wants to see that, and he's visual, and men are visually stimulated, and it's something that he's excited about. She's resistant. She had a dad that looked at porn. She doesn't want to be objectified. She's doesn't want to wear lingerie and feel like an object. And they've got these really varying positions on this. And so I would say to her, well, let's talk about why this is so hard for you, and talk to him, why is this so important to you? And
I like that.
right. And then they just talk. And, in the moment, it might be that this is not something that's going to happen for them. Over the course of time, as they keep having conversations around things like this might shift. And in most cases, through the years that I've counseled couples, often things will shift. As this communication really opens up around your sexual experiences together, and you start feeling safe, and you do the work. In the first or the second part of the book is all of the messaging that you've gotten around sexuality, and you're processing that as a person. Your spouse is processing that as an individual, and then together you come and you talk about everything, so you can create this sexual playbook, is what I call it, or that your sexual environment is going to be yours. It's not going to be what someone's mother said or what they heard in the locker room, or that they get to bring together what's going to happen in the here and now, recognizing that the here and now can shift down the road to a new here and now.
Right.
So that's, to me, the way to do that would be to, in my book Replenish, is to go to part 2 and start doing that individual work, because it's something that I think, one thing about sexuality is that it's intended to be relational. It's not intended to be something you do alone. And yet each of you are individuals. And so you need to do your own processing over what messages did you get growing up that you feel like are helpful, and what messages do you want to leave aside?
Right.
And spouse needs to do that. And then together, again, coming and processing that together, because it's intended to be a relational aspect of life. And I think that's probably the most concise answer I can give.
Yeah, I know. I've asked you entire podcast questions, like 5 of them now, but I love what you're saying, because there's such a mindset piece there. Like whether it comes to like how you feel wearing lingerie, say, that is such a mindset thing. And she's like relating it to her dad looking at porn. And you got to bring yourself into your marriage and say, I am not married to my dad, and I am not a porn star. Because I'm wearing lingerie. Like I'm choosing this for me to bring, my pleasure and my own sexuality into this relationship. And that's why I wanted to interview you, is because I feel like mindset is everything. Sex really is a mind game in so many ways. And like, I want you to talk about the no ghosts in the bedroom idea, and just like, we have to examine what we've been taught and believed and accepted into our minds as okay, not okay. That's me being objectified. And, there's just so many things, like so many head games around it, I think. But talk about the no ghosts in the bedroom concept that you talked about with your husband.
Okay. I guess to just say one more thing, I love what you said, Rachel, about the lingerie. You really should be wearing lingerie for yourself. When you put on lingerie, I know if in this situation I just gave of this couple I was counseling with, she feels like she has to do it for him. And no reasonable person wants to have sex with a spouse that doesn't want to be there.
Right.
And so ultimately, it needs to be something she decides she wants to do for her reasons. Right. So the no ghosts in the bedroom. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, Jeff and I both were married before, and our spouses have passed away. And so when we came together, we had been sexually active with our previous spouses. And before we were married, with my understanding of sexuality and some therapeutic, learning, I felt like it was really important that we didn't talk about our previous sexual relationships in a way that would be, and I don't want that to sound like you can't talk about anything, but you kind of know when you feel like you've disclosed a little too much, that Your relationship, the things that I shared with my husband and the things he shared with his wife, those are between us. And there is a very sacred boundary around what happens in that bedroom. And those are experiences that were our experiences.
Right.
And we need to keep those where they were and not bring the idea in the bedroom that oh, well, this is what I did before, so this is what we'll do now. So that's one way you can have ghosts if you're with different partners. But also ghosts in your head is huge, like what you're saying. A message that maybe you heard from your mother. The last person you want in the bedroom with yourself is your mother.
And that's definitely the last person your husband wants in there too, is his mother-in-law.
That's so true. Yeah. And the last, or your bishop or your mission president or whatever, you want to be the one in your bedroom, just the two of you. And so as much, and the brain is the largest sex organ. If your brain is not engaged in what it is you're doing, you're not going to be able to have a real joyful experience. And so controlling that, to me, the easiest way to do that, if it's a problem, is to do some externalizing practices. An easy one is to get an object that you don't like, maybe canned spinach or something. And
that's probably universal.
Yeah. And you look at that and you say, you know what? You're not welcome in our bedroom. Maybe, Mom, I love you, but you're not welcome in our bedroom. I'm putting you here and I'm shutting the door. You cannot come in. Now, you might be thinking, oh, that sounds ridiculous, but actually it's incredibly helpful. You can come in your bedroom, and if that comes up, what would my mom be thinking? You think, wait, Mom's out there. I already put her out there. She's not in here now. So simple externalizing practices can really help you come front and center and be really mindful when you're in the bedroom.
Yeah. And I'm thinking that we've had, any impressions we formed about sex when we were young, either from things our parents explicitly said or our impressions of their marital relationship. There's just so many things that, at some point you just need to be like, forget the kids, forget everything. I'm going to be here and make love to my husband. I'm going to be in this moment. And then it can just bring so much joy, but you got to drop the comparisons. You got to drop the messaging. You got to drop all of that and just be like, what am I doing here for me and for us?
100%. So, well said.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show. I'm going to want to interview you again, so hopefully you'll come back someday. But to wrap up, I just want to give you the opportunity to talk about your book, your retreats, your work. Where can people find you?
Okay. TammyHill.com, TammyHill.com is my website. I'm on social media, Instagram and Facebook. You can find me there. I have my book Replenish is available on Amazon. It's at BYU Bookstore. It's also, you can get it on my website if you want to. I host a podcast called Live Your Why, and you can tune into that on any platform.
It's excellent.
Thank you. But as far as making love retreats, I used to do those a lot live. I only did live retreats before the pandemic, and
that sounds a little funny. You might have to explain that.
Oh, okay. Well, couple retreats, people might enjoy that word. It's couple retreats with a focus on really learning and growing sexually together, and they are private, totally private, and very. If you know me at all, you would know that they would need to be private and they would need to be totally safe. And so that's what they were. But when the pandemic hit, we couldn't do those. And so I thought, well, let's try them virtually. And the virtual Making Love retreats have become incredibly popular. I do them 3 or 4 times in a year. And what you do is you either get rid of the children in your own home for 48 hours, or you get a babysitter and you go somewhere else for 48 hours. And You come on Friday night and I teach you something for an hour and a half and then give you homework to practice. Come back Saturday morning, we do that again, and then Saturday evening again. And there's several levels, and in each one I'm teaching different things that you're to help you enhance your lovemaking. And they're very affordable because they're not live too. So that's nice. I am doing one live event this year. It's going to be so fun at the Grand America at Christmas, December 8th through 10th. That will be really fun.
Oh, great.
So
we'll put all your contact info in the show notes. Do you still counsel with couples?
Yes.
Okay.
People can reach out via email and schedule.
Okay, wonderful. Well, it has been so nice having you here, and I hope we get to talk again sometime soon. I hope people will check out your podcast, Live Your Why. It's excellent and covers a range of topics, kind of like we've talked about today. So thank you, Tammy.
Hey, thank you, Rachel.
Hey, Mama. Thanks for listening to the show today. If you enjoy the ideas I share on my podcast, but you want some help applying them to your personal situation, I want to invite you to learn more about my coaching program, where I talk to moms on a personal basis through one-on-one coaching and group calls. We can talk about anything from the personal challenges that you're experiencing in marriage or motherhood to the goals and dreams that you have for yourself. To find out more and download a copy of my free book, Mom Mindset A to Z, visit mom-mindset.com. I'd love to see you there.